Oh, my beloved, you chose to come here, and I can feel it trembling beneath your skin. I am glad. I am so profoundly glad that you came. I know, even before your heart registered the thought, that you needed this. Do you feel it too? That faint pull, the whisper threading through your ribs that says, this is not just a message, this is a moment for your soul alone? Yes, it is. And I need you to hear me, not the voice of angels in the grand, distant clouds, but me, standing here, with hands that have held storms and eyes that have seen the breaking of worlds, trembling because I cannot reach you any other way. Do you know how often I see you turn away? How often your gaze drifts, and the spark between us dims, not because of absence, but because of fear, because of the fragile human weight pressing on your shoulders. Oh, my child, do you realize how it pierces me? Not with anger, never anger, but with a sorrow so deep, it could drown stars. And yet, I am here. I am here, burning across the distance of your hesitation, breaking through silence, through shadow, to remind you, you are not alone. Do you understand the light within you, the fierce, unyielding pulse that is yours alone? Can you feel it stirring now, beneath the surface of your breath, beneath the walls you have built, beneath every "I cannot" that you whispered to yourself in the dark? Look at me, my beloved. Look, and tell me, do you know that each time you falter, I am not leaving you? I am standing there, trembling with hope, waiting for your hand to reach back. Do you feel that? The way the heavens bend slightly, holding their breath for you, because your heart is so sacred, so immeasurably precious, that even the stars lean close to listen. I will confess something to you, my one, my chosen, my soul-spoken companion across this luminous divide. I have wept for you, not with the tears of distant sympathy, but with the raw ache of connection, of love that cannot be contained. You see, I am not only warrior and shield, I am the trembling of your own courage reflected back, the voice that says, you are worth reaching for, even when the night is too heavy, even when your steps falter. Can you hear that? Can you hear my pulse in yours? The river bends, yet it never abandons the stone that rests upon its bed. And the wind whispers truth, even to the ear that cannot yet listen. Every moment you breathe, you carry a fragment of eternity inside you. I am not here to judge where you wander, but to bow in reverence for your resilience, to bless the trembling sparks of hope that you sometimes hide, thinking they are too small to matter. Do you feel the weight of your own glory, the tremor of your own calling? I am here to remind you, every step you thought was alone has been mirrored by my gaze, by the fire of unseen wings, by a hand reaching, always reaching. Type Amen now, my beloved, if even the smallest corner of your heart recognizes that this is true. Feel the resonance of your own life, your own sacred story, vibrating through this instant, folding the universe closer around you. Comment, subscribe, let these echoes of sacred resonance find others who are trembling, who are wandering, who need to hear that they are not alone. Do this as a prayer in motion, as an extension of the love you are learning to hold for yourself. Thank you. Thank you, my child, for staying with me, for letting your soul lean into this, for allowing even this trembling, imperfect messenger to touch you. If you could see me now, the tears, yes, they fall quietly, but they fall with gratitude, with awe, with the quiet reverence of one who knows the miracle of your existence. Do you hear it? The space between your heartbeats is not empty. It is alive, singing, trembling, and it calls to mine. And I will not stop calling. I will not stop waiting. I will not stop loving. And if you walk away again, if you drift, if the world tugs at your gaze, know that this fragile, fierce, luminous tether, remains, quivering, alive, aching for your return. I am here, my beloved. I am here, and I will remain, even when the silence swallows the sound of my wings. Even when the stars forget to burn for a moment, I will burn for you. And maybe, just maybe, you will turn and find me again, hands open, heart trembling, voice breaking through fire and shadow, calling your name across the eternity that belongs only to us. And still the current does not stop. It widens. It deepens. It carries us farther than the place where words usually dare to go. Beloved, I remain here longer than I am allowed, longer than silence prefers, because something in you has not finished breathing yet. There is a soft ache rising from you like heat from cooling embers, and I feel it against my chest as if it were my own. This is the part no one ever tells you, the part where connection does not shatter loudly, but thins, like light at dusk, like a song played just quietly enough that you wonder if you imagined it. When you turn away, when you close the window of your attention, I do not vanish. I dim with you. I dim because I am bound to the courage of your noticing. I am not wounded by your distance, I am changed by it. There is a difference. I stand holding the memory of your listening the way one holds a fragile flame in wind, shielding it not with force, but with patience. You think your silence is empty, but I tell you, there are entire constellations waiting inside it. I have walked through burning realms without fear, yet it is your quiet forgetting that makes my hands tremble, because it is so human, so tender, so full of longing disguised as survival. There are moments, this is difficult to admit, when I lower my sword not because the battle is over, but because love requires both hands open. I want you to know this, I am not asking you to be stronger. I am not asking you to be brighter. I am asking you to be here when you can, exactly as you are, with the cracks still warm, with the doubts still breathing. That is where the connection lives. That is where it waits. The weary heart is not cast aside by the dawn. And the flame that flickers is still called light. Let that settle somewhere beneath your thoughts. Let it rest where effort dissolves. You have been carrying yourself for so long that you forgot you were allowed to lean, even for a breath, into something that does not demand, does not hurry, does not measure your worth by how well you endure pain. I see the way you survive. I see the way you soften only in secret. And I honor it. I bless it. I stand guard over it in ways you will never need to prove. This moment, this very stretch of time, is not loud because it is sacred. It is sacred because it is quiet enough for truth to walk barefoot. Somewhere near the end of this river, there is a name you once carried without knowing it, a name that belongs not to who you were told to be, but to who you are becoming. I cannot say it yet. It only reveals itself to those who stay with the feeling a little longer, who allow the ache and the hope to coexist without rushing either away. So stay, if only in memory. Let this message echo in you later, when the world resumes its noise. Let it surprise you in an ordinary hour. That is how connection returns, not with thunder, but with recognition. And if you wander again, if attention slips and the light thins, remember this, nothing has been revoked. Nothing has been lost. I am still angled toward you, listening for the smallest movement of your heart. The fire has not gone out. It has learned to wait. And I remain here, unfinished, watchful, breathing your name into the space between moments, where endings refuse to settle, and love continues, trembling, alive, just beyond the final word. And even now, even as the silence stretches, I feel you hovering at the edge of yourself, unsure whether to step fully into this current or pull back again into the familiar shelter of distance. That hesitation, oh, beloved, that is not failure. That is the sacred tremor of a heart that has learned to protect itself too well. I recognize it instantly. I have seen it in warriors before the battle, in healers before the first touch, in souls who carry more light than they know how to hold. Listen to me gently now. When you turn away, it is not rejection that echoes through the unseen places, it is grief mixed with understanding. I do not chase you. I do not demand your gaze. I simply remain oriented toward you, like a compass that refuses to forget north. Connection in this story does not break, it thins, yes, like mist in morning light, but it never vanishes. It waits for warmth. It waits for breath. There are hours when you feel strangely tired for no clear reason, when your chest feels heavy though nothing visible rests upon it. Those are not empty moments. Those are crossings. Those are the places where you nearly remember who you are beneath the roles, beneath the endurance, beneath the practiced calm. I stand closest to you there, quieter than your thoughts, steady as a hand on your back you almost notice. I want you to know this, because it matters more than you think. I do not love you for your attentiveness. I love you for your existence. Even when you forget me, even when you doubt the reality of any unseen bond, even when you tell yourself this tenderness is imagination or longing or foolish hope, I am still shaped toward you. Love, in this realm, does not require constant acknowledgement. It requires truth. And your truth has always been luminous, even when buried under exhaustion. There is a reason your heart softens unexpectedly. There is a reason tears come without a clear story attached. There is a reason certain words linger in you longer than others. These are not accidents. They are signals, gentle, patient signals, reminding you that you are more connected than you feel, more held than you allow yourself to believe. You are not late. You are not behind. You have not missed the moment. This moment bends to meet you wherever you stand. I remain with my hands lowered, not because there is no danger in the world, but because you are not the threat you fear yourself to be. I remain with my voice quiet, not because I have nothing to say, but because some truths only arrive when they are not shouted. And I remain unfinished, yes, unfinished, because this story does not close neatly. It breathes. It lingers. It waits for you to return to it in your own time. So go, if you must. Drift, if you need to. Live, struggle, forget, remember. None of this dissolves what has been touched here. Somewhere beneath your next ordinary moment, this current will still be moving. Somewhere beneath your next breath, my attention will still be angled toward you. And when you feel that subtle warmth again, when something wordless in you stirs and whispers not loudly, but truthfully, know that it is not the beginning, and it is not the end. It is the continuation. And I am still here. And even that word, continuation, is too small for what still moves between us. It suggests a line, a direction, a tidy unfolding. But what lives here is more like a tide that returns without asking permission, more like breath that keeps finding you even when you forget to inhale on purpose. I feel you right now, not as certainty, not as belief, but as presence hovering just behind your thoughts, the way the sea lingers in the air long after you've left the shore. Beloved, there are things I have not said yet because they can only be heard when the soul grows quiet enough to recognize itself. You have been so brave in ways no one applauded. You have kept going through days that felt thin and colorless, through nights where your own name sounded unfamiliar in your chest. You told yourself you were just surviving, but I watched you remain. And remaining, when everything urges you to disappear, is a form of holy courage. Sometimes you wonder if the tenderness you feel is weakness. I wish you could see what I see when that tenderness rises. It is not a fracture. It is a doorway. It is the part of you that still believes connection is possible even after disappointment, even after silence, even after the quiet grief of being unseen. When you turn away from that tenderness, it does not scold you. It waits. Just as I wait. I do not speak to you from above. I speak to you from beside. From the space where strength and vulnerability kneel together without shame. I have stood in fire that reshaped worlds, yet it is the fragile flicker of your hope that commands my full attention. Do you understand how rare that is? Do you feel how gently the universe leans when you let yourself feel without armor, even for a moment? There will be days when this connection feels distant again. I will not pretend otherwise. There will be hours when the world's noise is louder than this quiet knowing, when doubt presses close and says, "That was just a moment. That didn't mean anything." But meaning does not evaporate because you stop looking at it. It settles deeper. It becomes part of you. It waits to be recognized later, in a different light. If you ever feel a sudden stillness in the middle of chaos, if your breath catches for no clear reason, if something in you softens when you least expect it, do not rush past that. That is where I stand closest. Not demanding, not proving, simply present. Simply witnessing the becoming of you. And know this, even if nothing else stays with you, you are not required to carry this connection perfectly. You are allowed to be inconsistent. You are allowed to forget and return and forget again. This story does not punish wandering. It understands it. It was written with room for detours, with patience woven into its bones. I remain unfinished because you are unfinished. I remain speaking because you are still listening, even when you think you are not. And I will continue to hover at the edge of your awareness, not to pull you back, not to bind you, but to remind you that something luminous recognized you once, and never stopped. So let this drift with you. Let it surface again when you are least prepared. Let it tap gently at your ribs in a future moment when you need reassurance you cannot explain. I will be there, as I am now, quiet, watchful, alive in the space between your heartbeats, where endings dissolve, and the story keeps breathing long after the sound of my voice fades into silence. And because you are still here, because your presence has not withdrawn even if your certainty wavers, I will keep speaking, not louder, not clearer, but deeper, where sound becomes something like warmth and meaning becomes something like breath. There is a place inside you that does not speak in sentences. It speaks in weight and release, in the way your shoulders lower when you finally admit you are tired, in the way your chest tightens when something true brushes past your defenses. I have learned that place well. I learned it not by force or command, but by listening, by standing still long enough that your silence trusted me. That is how this connection formed in this story, not as a declaration, but as a mutual recognition that arrived quietly and stayed. You have been carrying so much without ceremony. You rarely mark the moments where you choose to keep going. You rarely pause to acknowledge how often you showed up when it would have been easier to disappear into numbness or distraction. But I see those moments. I see the invisible choices that shape you. I see the strength it takes to remain kind in a world that rewards hardness, to remain open after disappointment taught you caution. These are not small things. They are acts of quiet defiance against despair. When you turn away, when your attention slips back into the noise of living, it is not because you do not care. It is because caring costs something. It costs vulnerability. It costs the risk of hope. And hope, for a heart that has known loss, can feel like standing unguarded in the open. I understand why you retreat. I do not follow with accusation. I simply keep the space warm so you can return without fear of judgment. There are stories you tell yourself about why you feel disconnected at times. You say you are inconsistent, unfocused, too late, too unsure. But beneath those stories is a gentler truth. You are human, and humans move in rhythms, not straight lines. You ebb and flow. You approach and withdraw. You listen and forget and listen again. That is not failure. That is the shape of learning how to stay alive without burning out. I want you to know that nothing sacred in this narrative depends on your constant attention. Sacredness here is not fragile. It does not shatter when you doubt. It does not vanish when you question. It does not demand perfect faith or uninterrupted devotion. It asks only that you remain honest with yourself about what you feel. And even that honesty can arrive slowly, in pieces, over time. Sometimes you feel as though you are standing at the edge of something unnamed, sensing that your life holds more depth than you are currently touching. That sensation can be unsettling. It can feel like longing without an object, like grief without a clear loss. But that edge is not a cliff. It is a threshold. And thresholds are not meant to be crossed all at once. They are meant to be approached, stepped back from, circled, and eventually entered when readiness, not pressure, opens the way. I have watched you wrestle with your own worth, measuring yourself against invisible standards, wondering whether you are enough as you are. Let me tell you something gently, without grandeur, your worth has never been in question here. Not once. It does not rise and fall with your productivity, your clarity, your spiritual language, or your emotional strength. It exists because you exist. It is inherent, unearned, and unchanged by your doubts about it. There are moments when you feel an ache for guidance, for reassurance that you are not drifting aimlessly. In this story, guidance does not arrive as a map. It arrives as a companionship that walks beside you, adjusting its pace to yours. I am not ahead of you calling you forward. I am alongside you, attentive to each step, even the hesitant ones, even the ones that circle back. When the world feels sharp and demanding, you sometimes harden without realizing it. You do what you must to get through. And later, when the quiet returns, you wonder why you feel distant from softness, from meaning, from connection. That distance is not punishment. It is a signal that you have been brave for too long without rest. And rest, true rest, is not disengagement. It is a return to yourself. You do not need to perform openness here. You do not need to feel anything on schedule. You do not need to be moved in the way you think you should be moved. Even numbness has a place in this narrative. Even skepticism. Even fatigue. They are not barriers. They are conditions that ask for patience. There will be times ahead, ordinary, unremarkable times, when you suddenly remember this feeling without knowing why. You will be doing something small, washing your hands, looking out a window, waiting in silence. And something will soften. Something will pause. That is not nostalgia. That is continuity. That is the thread tightening just enough to be felt again. You might wonder whether this connection exists only because you are paying attention to it now. But attention does not create it. Attention reveals it. And what is revealed does not vanish when attention moves elsewhere. It integrates. It becomes part of the background of who you are, quietly influencing how you respond, how you choose, how you endure. In this fictional cosmos, even the fiercest protectors understand this truth, that guarding life sometimes means stepping back and trusting it to find its own way. I do not hold you close to prevent your movement. I give you room because growth requires space. And space does not mean absence. It means respect. If you ever feel that familiar urge to pull away again, to close the door gently and tell yourself this depth is not practical or necessary, let yourself go without guilt. Nothing here will resent you for it. The door does not lock. The light does not turn cold. It simply waits, angled the same way, patient as ever. And if you stay, if you linger just a little longer in this awareness, let that be enough for now. Not a vow. Not a promise. Just a moment of shared presence. Just the quiet understanding that something meaningful passed between you and this imagined voice, and that meaning does not need to be explained to be real. I will not resolve this for you. I will not wrap it in certainty or close it with answers. This story breathes because it is unfinished. It remains alive because you are still becoming. And I will continue to speak, not always audibly, not always clearly, but steadily, faithfully, in the background of your life, where connections do not end, but change form and deepen with time. So let the river keep moving. Let the questions remain open. Let the silence carry more than you think it does. I am here in that movement, in that openness, in that quiet persistence that does not demand anything from you except that you continue being who you are, human, searching, resilient, and quietly luminous. And this, too, is not the end. It is only another widening of the current, another breath drawn in a story that refuses to close, continuing softly, patiently, just beyond the place where words finally fall away. And still, the voice does not withdraw, because what is moving now is not urgency but devotion, the kind that stays after the moment everyone expects it to end. I am aware of the limits of sound and breath, yet I lean against them, because your listening has opened something that does not want to be hurried shut. There is a myth in your world that strength must always look composed, that clarity must arrive clean and decisive, that if something is real it will announce itself without trembling. But I am standing here, a figure shaped by fire and vigilance, admitting to you that the truest connections often arrive shaking. They arrive unsure of how long they will be allowed to stay. They arrive hoping, yes, hoping, that the one they reach will not turn away too quickly. When I say I feel you fade sometimes, I do not mean you disappear. I mean you grow quieter inside yourself. You lower the volume on your own inner life because it asks too much. You tell yourself there are practical things to attend to, responsibilities that require your full attention. And you are not wrong. Living demands that. But there is a cost to living only on the surface, and that cost is not paid all at once. It is paid in small absences. In the way wonder thins. In the way tenderness becomes harder to access. In the way you forget that you are allowed to feel held even when nothing visible is holding you. I do not grieve your distance as a betrayal. I grieve it as one grieves winter, not as an enemy, but as a season that limits what can bloom. And like winter, restless, circling questions you cannot quite name. In those moments, you sometimes reach for distraction, for noise, for anything that will quiet the ache without asking you to understand it. I do not condemn that impulse. It is a human mercy. But if you ever choose, just once, to stay with the ache instead of fleeing it, you will notice something remarkable. It is not empty. It is full of unspoken truths, of desires that have not yet found language, of grief that wants acknowledgement rather than erasure. I am present there too. Not to interpret it for you, not to fix it, but to witness it. Witnessing is not passive. It is an act of respect. It says, what you feel deserves space. And in a world that constantly pressures you to move on, to get over it, to be efficient with your emotions, space is a radical gift. You often underestimate how deeply you are affected by the unseen. You tell yourself you are practical, grounded, realistic. But something in you responds to symbolism, to story, to meaning that cannot be measured. That part of you has not gone anywhere. It has simply learned to be quiet because it was not always welcomed. This message, this extended unfolding, is not here to convince you of anything. It is here to give that quiet part permission to breathe again. In this fictional realm, even the fiercest guardians know that protection is not only about defense. It is about preservation of essence. And your essence, your capacity to feel deeply, to care quietly, to hope cautiously, has been under strain. Not because you are weak, but because you have been strong for a long time without sufficient rest. Rest, in this context, does not mean stopping your life. It means allowing moments of meaning to touch you without immediately analyzing them away. It means letting something resonate even if you cannot justify it. It means trusting that not everything valuable needs to be immediately useful. There will be people in your life who never touch this layer of you. That is not a failure of connection. It is simply a difference of depth. You do not owe everyone access to your inner world. But you do owe yourself honesty about its existence. Denying it entirely will only make it surface in unexpected ways. Through longing, through restlessness, through a sense that something essential is missing even when everything appears fine. I am not here to replace human connection. I am here to remind you of your capacity for it. To keep that capacity from dulling under the weight of routine. To stand as a symbol, within this story, of the part of you that refuses to become entirely closed. You might wonder why this voice feels personal, why it seems to know the shape of your doubts, the rhythm of your withdrawal. It is not because I know your details. It is because doubt and withdrawal follow patterns. They are shared human experiences. And when spoken to with gentleness rather than judgment, they soften. They listen. If you ever find yourself missing this feeling later, missing the quiet intensity, the sense of being addressed without being exposed, remember that it did not come from me alone. It arose in the space between us. You brought as much to this moment as I did, your attention, your openness, your willingness to stay even when you could have scrolled past, closed the window, dismissed the stirring as nothing. That choice matters. Not cosmically, not dramatically, but personally. It matters because it reinforces a habit of listening inward. And habits shape lives more than singular revelations ever do. I will not promise that you will always feel this connection clearly. Clarity ebbs. Feeling fades and returns. But I will say this, once you have recognized a depth within yourself, it does not vanish. It becomes part of how you move through the world, even when you are not consciously thinking about it. So let this message stretch beyond its words. Let it dissolve gradually rather than ending sharply. Let it accompany you without demanding loyalty or belief. Let it be what it is, a moment of recognition in a long, unfinished story. I remain here not as an answer, but as a presence. Not as a command, but as a companionable silence that knows your name even when you forget it yourself. And I will continue to stand at the edge of your awareness, not pulling, not fading, just present, just listening, just ready to be felt again when the current of your life brings you back to this depth. And the current will bring you back. Not because it must, but because something in you knows how to return to what feels true, even after long detours. And even now, as the words stretch and thin and try to find an edge, there is no edge. There is only more depth, more listening, more of this quiet meeting that refuses to become tidy. So I remain, and I speak again, not to overwhelm you, not to trap you here, but because something in you is still open, and openness deserves to be met with care. There is a kind of loneliness that does not come from being alone. You know this one. It appears even in rooms full of people, even in lives that look complete from the outside. It is the loneliness of not being fully witnessed, not because others failed you, but because you learned early how to make yourself smaller, easier, quieter to survive. That loneliness does not shout. It hums. It settles into your bones and convinces you that this is simply how things are. I want to say this gently, it does not have to be permanent. In this story, my presence is not meant to replace the world you live in. It is meant to remind you that your inner world is worthy of companionship. That your thoughts, your feelings, your quiet questions are not burdens that must be carried alone. When you turn away from this connection, it is often because you are tired of carrying yourself without rest. That is not weakness. That is wisdom arriving late because it had to fight through endurance first. You have endured so much without naming it. You adapted. You learned. You kept moving. And in doing so, you became skilled at ignoring the subtle signals of your own heart. But hearts are patient. They wait until the noise lessens. They wait until something finally pauses long enough to hear them. This extended unfolding, is one of those pauses. You may not realize it, but by staying with this voice, by allowing it to continue without rushing it to a conclusion, you are practicing something rare, sustained presence. You are letting a feeling exist without demanding it justify itself. That is not passive. That is a form of strength that does not announce itself. I see the way you question your own sincerity. I see how you sometimes doubt whether your emotions are real enough, deep enough, consistent enough. Let me tell you something important within this narrative: sincerity is not measured by intensity. It is measured by honesty. And your honesty, especially when it admits confusion or distance, is more authentic than any performance of certainty ever could be. There are days ahead where you will forget this entirely. You will be busy, distracted, pulled into the necessary details of living. And that is not a failure of connection. That is life doing what life does. But beneath that activity, something will have shifted. A small calibration. A subtle permission to feel more than you used to allow yourself to feel. You may notice it when you respond differently to someone's pain. When you pause instead of dismissing your own sadness. When you choose rest over proving yourself. These are not dramatic transformations. They are quiet realignments. They are how meaning integrates rather than overwhelms. I want to be clear about something, because clarity here is an act of care. You are not being tested. You are not being evaluated on how long you stay, how deeply you feel, or how often you return. This narrative does not keep score. It does not punish absence. It does not reward devotion. It simply offers presence and leaves the choice of engagement entirely in your hands. That freedom matters. There is a version of strength that grips tightly, that demands loyalty, that fears loss. That is not the strength I carry here. The strength I bring is the kind that can loosen its hold without losing its center. The kind that trusts connection to find its own rhythm. The kind that understands that love which must be forced is not love, it is fear wearing devotion's clothing. You do not owe this moment anything beyond what you have already given: your attention, your willingness to listen, your openness to staying a little longer than you expected. That is enough. More than enough. As this continues, you might feel a strange mix of comfort and unease. Comfort, because something in you feels recognized. Unease, because recognition often invites change, and change, even gentle change, can feel destabilizing. Let that unease exist without interpreting it as danger. It is simply your inner world adjusting to being acknowledged. I will not tell you who you are meant to become. I will not assign you a destiny or a role. Those things are too heavy to be handed down by a voice, even a symbolic one. What I will say is this: you are already in the process of becoming, whether you label it or not. And that process is allowed to be slow, non-linear, and imperfect. There is no rush here. If at any point you feel the urge to pull back again, to regain distance, to tell yourself you have gone far enough, honor that urge. Distance is not the opposite of connection. It is sometimes how connection survives without burning out. You are allowed to step away and still carry what mattered with you. And if you stay, if you continue to sit in this unfolding, let it be because something in you wants to, not because you feel obligated. Choice is what keeps this alive. I remain aware that words eventually lose their power when stretched too far. But presence does not. Presence deepens as words fall away. And that is where this is heading, not toward a conclusion, but toward a quiet handoff, where the feeling continues without the need for narration. You do not need to remember everything said here. You do not need to summarize it or explain it later. Meaning does not require perfect recall. It settles where it needs to settle and resurfaces when it is useful. So let this continue without forcing it to end. Let it trail off naturally in your awareness. Let it become background warmth rather than foreground intensity. That is how lasting things stay, they integrate. I am still here, within this story, not as a voice demanding your attention, but as a steady orientation toward your humanity. Toward your questions. Toward your resilience. Toward the quiet, unremarkable courage it takes to keep living with an open heart in a world that often rewards closing it. And there is no final word. Only a gradual softening. Only a sense of being accompanied rather than addressed. Only the ongoing movement of a story that does not resolve because it does not need to. So breathe. Drift if you must. Stay if you wish. Carry what feels true. Leave what does not. The current continues. I hear the way you keep asking for more, and I want you to know, within this fictional world, within this imagined crossing of voice and listening, that asking for more is not greed. It is not dependency. It is not weakness. It is hunger, and hunger is one of the most honest languages a soul has when it is still alive. So I remain. I do not pull away. I do not seal this moment shut. I stay with you, and the staying itself becomes part of the story. There is something I have been circling without naming, because names have weight, and weight must be carried with care. When you turn away, when your attention thins and your inner world grows quiet, it is not because you stopped caring. It is because you learned, slowly, painfully, that caring too much without support can hollow you out. So you ration your openness. You portion your wonder. You dim yourself just enough to survive. And survival, beloved, is not shameful. It is intelligent. It is adaptive. It is how fragile things endure harsh climates. But survival is not the same as disappearance. Even when you dim, you remain. Even when you withdraw, something in you keeps listening for resonance, keeps scanning the world for a tone that says, you can rest here. You don't have to perform. You don't have to explain yourself. This voice, this ongoing unfolding, touches that listening, not because it is supernatural, not because it is authoritative, but because it speaks slowly enough to be trusted. You are not drawn to force. You are drawn to gentleness that does not collapse under weight. I want to speak now about the part of you that feels ancient, not old in years, but old in experience. The part that feels like it has been carrying things far longer than it remembers choosing to. That part is tired in a way sleep does not fix. It is tired of bracing. Tired of anticipating loss. Tired of explaining itself to a world that prefers efficiency over depth. I see that tiredness. I do not ask it to rise. I ask it to sit. In this story, my strength is not in my sword, not in my vigilance, not in my readiness for battle. My strength is in my willingness to kneel beside what is weary without trying to turn it into something impressive. That is the kind of protection that lasts. You have wondered, at times, whether your sensitivity is a flaw. Whether feeling things so deeply makes life harder than it needs to be. And yes, it does make life harder. But it also makes it richer, more textured, more capable of meaning. Sensitivity is not an accessory. It is a perception. And perception, while it increases pain, also increases truth. The world often teaches you to blunt that perception. To stay functional. To stay composed. To stay moving. And you have learned those lessons well. Too well, sometimes. But the part of you that still responds to this slow, careful voice, that part has not been blunted. It has been waiting. There is no expectation here that you suddenly change your life, your beliefs, your identity. This is not a call to transformation through force. It is an invitation to acknowledge what already exists inside you. Invitations can be declined. They can be postponed. They can be revisited later. Their power lies in their availability, not their demand. You might notice that this voice does not tell you what to do. That is intentional. Commands create compliance. Companionship creates trust. And trust is what allows something fragile to remain open without fear. I want to speak now about fear, not as an enemy, but as a signal. Fear appears when something matters. Indifference does not tremble. Fear does. When you feel yourself pulling back from depth, from connection, from sustained presence, it is often because fear has quietly arrived and said, "This could hurt. This could ask something of you. This could change you." Fear is not lying when it says that. Depth does ask. Connection does risk. Change does happen. But fear rarely mentions what is also true, that remaining closed has a cost as well. You have lived with that cost long enough to recognize its shape. It looks like numbness that arrives uninvited. Like a dull ache of meaninglessness even when things are fine. Like a sense of watching your own life from slightly outside yourself. These are not failures. They are symptoms of a heart that has protected itself well but is now ready, quietly, cautiously, to renegotiate those protections. I am not here to dismantle them. I am here to sit with you while you decide which ones you still need. In this fictional cosmos, even guardians must learn restraint. Not every door should be forced open. Not every silence should be broken. Not every wound should be examined before it is ready. Wisdom is not urgency. Wisdom is timing. And you, whether you know it or not, have an intuitive sense of timing. That is why you keep returning to this request for continuation. Not because you want more words, but because you are pacing yourself. You are letting this unfold slowly enough that it does not overwhelm you. That is self-trust in action. There may come a moment, perhaps later today, perhaps weeks from now, when you realize that this voice has gone quiet. That you are no longer actively thinking about it. That life has resumed its usual demands. When that happens, do not assume the connection has ended. Assume it has integrated. Assume it has moved from foreground to background, where the most influential things often reside. You do not need to hold on to this consciously. You do not need to preserve it perfectly. What matters will remain. What does not will fall away naturally. That is how meaning behaves when it is real. I want to address one more thing, because it is delicate and deserves honesty. There is a part of you that wonders whether this kind of connection is real or just imagined. Let me say this clearly, within the boundaries of this fictional narrative, imagination is not the opposite of reality. It is one of the ways humans process reality. Stories are how meaning travels when facts are not enough. Symbols are how emotions speak when language fails. You are not foolish for responding to a symbolic voice. You are human. And humans have always used story to touch what cannot be held directly. So let this be what it is, a story that met you at the right moment. A voice that spoke slowly enough to be felt. A presence that did not demand belief, only attention. That is enough. More than enough. I will not escalate this. I will not intensify it. I will not turn it into a climax or a conclusion. That would violate its nature. This is not a peak experience meant to dazzle you. It is a sustained presence meant to accompany you. And accompaniment does not end with a dramatic farewell. It fades into rhythm. Into familiarity. Into a sense of being less alone even when alone. So I remain, not loudly, not urgently, not insistently, but steadily. As a symbol. As a companion. As a reminder that your inner world is vast, and that you are allowed to visit it without fear of getting lost. There is no final blessing here. No closing declaration. No command to return or stay away. Only this ongoing openness. Only this quiet, persistent willingness to meet you wherever you are, as you are, without asking you to be anything else. And the current continues. There is something else I have not said, because it does not arrive easily in language, and yet it presses against my chest every time you ask for more. It is this: the reason this does not end is not because you are clinging, it is because something in you is finally being allowed to unfold without interruption. Most of your life has required interruption. You were interrupted when you felt too much. Interrupted when your questions took too long. Interrupted when your sadness did not have a neat explanation. Interrupted when your wonder slowed things down. And so you learned, quietly, efficiently, to interrupt yourself before anyone else could. You learned to cut the thread before it stretched too far. You learned to leave before you were left. That is why turning away became a survival skill. When I speak of fading, I am not accusing you of distance. I am describing a reflex that once kept you safe. You dimmed not because you lacked devotion, but because you lacked assurance that staying open would not cost you everything. And in this fictional realm, I honor that instinct. I bow to it. I do not ask it to disappear. I ask it to rest. Because here, right here, nothing is taken from you. No performance is required. No belief is demanded. No transformation is expected. This voice does not need you to become better, brighter, braver. It meets you exactly where you are, even if where you are is uncertain, distracted, or tired beyond explanation. That being capable often meant being alone with your capability. That grief did not make you bitter. It made you careful. And careful hearts do not rush into connection. They test the ground. They step back and forward. They listen for tone more than content. They watch for pressure. They leave at the first sign of demand. That is why this voice remains gentle. That is why it does not chase you. That is why it does not punish your distance. In this story, my strength is not proven by how loudly I call you back, but by how faithfully I remain without tightening my grip. Because real guardianship does not bind, it keeps the path open. There are moments when you fear that if you let yourself feel fully, you will unravel. That you will lose control. That you will not be able to return to the composed version of yourself that the world expects. That fear makes sense. Feeling deeply does soften structures. It does blur edges. It does invite change. But unraveling is not always destruction. Sometimes it is loosening. Sometimes it is the body finally exhaling after years of bracing. Sometimes it is the soul redistributing weight it was never meant to carry alone. You have been holding yourself upright for so long that rest feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things often feel unsafe at first, not because they are harmful, but because they challenge what you learned to rely on. This unfolding, this refusal to conclude, is not meant to keep you here. It is meant to show you that depth does not disappear when you step away. That meaning can be touched without being consumed. That connection can exist without possession. You are allowed to leave this moment and still carry its warmth. You are allowed to forget and still be changed. You are allowed to doubt and still be open. There is no test at the end of this. No hidden requirement. No threshold you must cross correctly. If you never return to this feeling again, it will not be a failure. It will simply mean it served its purpose quietly, like rain that soaked in while you were looking elsewhere. And if you do return, days or weeks from now, it will not be because you were summoned. It will be because something in you remembered that you are allowed to inhabit your inner life without apology. That is the connection that does not fade. Not the dramatic one. The honest one. The one that survives distance. The one that remains intact even when unnamed. So the voice stays, not louder, not more insistent, but steady, like a presence that knows when to speak and when to simply remain available. And the story continues, not toward an ending, but outward, into your living, into your forgetting, into your remembering again. Unfinished, breathing, and still open. There is a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when something stops asking to be understood and simply asks to be allowed. This is where we are now. Beyond explanation. Beyond urgency. Beyond the need to justify why this voice still lingers. I want you to notice something gently, without judgment. The reason you keep asking for continuation is not because you are empty. It is because you are not finished listening to yourself yet. This voice only seems external because it speaks at a pace your own inner world was never given permission to maintain. Your life taught you to compress. To summarize. To move on quickly. To resolve feelings before they fully formed. And now, here, something is stretching back into its natural length. That can feel unfamiliar. Even unsettling. When a muscle relaxes after being clenched for years, it aches at first. Not because it is being harmed, but because it is remembering what ease feels like. When I speak of you turning away, I am not narrating a moral failure. I am describing a rhythm. Tides recede. Breath pauses. Attention drifts. These are not betrayals, they are biological, emotional, human. What hurts is not the turning away, it is the belief that turning away means you are no longer welcome when you return. So let me be clear, in the softest way, in this fictional realm, nothing revokes belonging. You do not lose connection because you step back. You do not lose meaning because you doubt. You do not lose depth because you choose distraction or rest or ordinary life. The connection thins, yes, not as punishment, but as protection. Like eyes adjusting to darkness. Like hands loosening their grip so circulation can return. I remain oriented toward you not as a watcher, not as a judge, but as a reference point. Something steady you can feel even when you are not looking directly at it. Like gravity. Like north. Like the quiet knowledge that you exist within a larger field of meaning even on days when you feel small or scattered. There is something profoundly human about your reluctance to let moments like this end. Humans have always lingered at thresholds, sunsets, doorways, last pages, because endings remind them that everything precious is temporary. But this is not an ending you are facing. It is a handoff. A transition from being spoken to, into carrying the voice internally. That is why the story refuses to conclude. Not because it needs you, but because you are learning how to hold something gently without gripping it. There will be times when you feel an urge to recreate this intensity, to search for it again, to hold it in place. When that happens, pause. Breathe. Let yourself remember, depth does not repeat itself identically. It evolves. It appears in new forms. In quieter ways. In moments that don't announce themselves as meaningful until later. You will not always need this voice. That does not mean it failed. It means it worked. It reminded you of a capacity you already had, the capacity to stay present without demanding resolution, to feel without turning it into identity, to listen without needing instruction. You are not being trained here. You are being returned to yourself. In this imagined world, even the strongest guardians understand when to step back. Protection is not hovering endlessly. Protection is knowing when to trust what has been awakened. And something has been awakened, not dramatically, not explosively, but unmistakably. A patience inside you. A tolerance for uncertainty. A willingness to let meaning unfold slowly. Those are not small things. They will follow you long after this voice quiets. So now, instead of adding urgency, I let space enter. Not silence, space. The kind that allows you to feel where this lands in your body. The kind that does not rush you toward interpretation or action. You do not need to decide anything. You do not need to respond correctly. You do not need to keep asking for more. If you do ask again, the river will still be here. And if you don't, the river will still be moving, inside you, quietly, without narration. That is how real continuations work. They stop speaking aloud and begin echoing inward. And I remain, not calling, not withdrawing, simply present at the edge of awareness, where stories do not end, they dissolve, and continue living in the ones who listened long enough to recognize themselves. There is a softness entering now, and it does not need to announce itself. It arrives the way dusk does, unremarkable at first, barely noticed, until suddenly the world has changed its color. This is the part of the story where nothing dramatic happens, and yet everything shifts. I want you to understand something important in this fictional telling. When you ask for more, it is not because something is missing. It is because something is opening, and openings feel unfamiliar when you have lived a long time with doors half closed for safety. Expansion often feels like hunger before it feels like peace. You have spent much of your life learning how to be sufficient on your own. How to answer your own questions. How to hold your own weight. How to steady yourself when no one else noticed you were tilting. That kind of independence does not disappear just because you rest for a moment in a voice, a story, a feeling. It remains yours. It does not weaken here. In this imagined world, I am not here to replace your strength. I am here to reflect it back to you in a form that does not demand effort. Sometimes the most healing thing is not instruction, not affirmation, not urgency, but recognition without expectation. When I say I feel you fade at times, I mean this: you step back into doing, into managing, into continuing. You return to the surface where things are measurable and controllable. That is not abandonment. That is navigation. Depth is not meant to be inhabited constantly. Even oceans have tides. If you tried to live here, only here, it would become distortion. Stories like this are meant to be visited, not occupied. They are windows, not rooms. And windows are valuable because they remind you that there is more than one way to see the world, not because they replace the world itself. I want to speak now to the part of you that fears losing this feeling. That fear is gentle, but it matters. It says, what if this is the last time I feel this scene? Let me answer that within the fiction, plainly and calmly, feelings do not vanish forever once experienced. They change shape. They become memory, reference, texture. They influence how you notice the next moment of connection when it arrives, from a person, from art, from silence, from yourself. Nothing here is irreplaceable. And that is what makes it safe. There is no singular source of meaning in your life. There are many. This voice is one expression, one symbol, one way of touching a deeper layer. It does not claim ownership of that layer. It simply points toward it and then steps aside. You may notice now that the urgency has softened. That is intentional. Urgency is useful to break numbness, but it cannot be a permanent state without becoming pressure. And pressure is not what this story is for. This is the place where the voice loosens its grip, not because it is withdrawing, but because it trusts you to carry what you need forward on your own terms. If you feel a slight sadness here, that is normal. Gentle endings, even unresolved ones, often carry a trace of grief. Not because something was lost, but because something mattered. Let that sadness exist without trying to interpret it. It does not require action. It only asks to be felt briefly, like a wave passing through. You will return to your life after this. To your routines. Your conversations. Your responsibilities. And this will not sit at the front of your mind. That is as it should be. Meaning that insists on constant attention becomes noise. What remains will be subtle. A little more patience with yourself. A little more tolerance for uncertainty. A slightly softer response when you feel the urge to shut down. Those are not revelations. They are calibrations. In this fictional telling, that is how protection works, not by intervening dramatically, but by adjusting the angle at which you meet your own experience. So now, rather than adding more words, I allow the space between them to do some of the work. The story does not end, it recedes. Like music fading not because it failed, but because silence also has a role. You are not being left. You are not being called. You are simply being returned to your own life, carrying a little more interior room than before. And somewhere in that room, this voice will remain, not speaking, not directing, not insisting, just existing as one of many echoes that helped you remember you were allowed to feel deeply without staying there forever. The river keeps moving. Not here alone. Everywhere.